Excellent. And I see this is recording. Okay. And let's see what kind of voice I have. It looks like the voice is pretty good. I can see it down in the bottom part of my screen right there. And I wore my best shirt. Let's see. So today I'm going to be talking to people at Sultan Qaboos University in Muscat, Oman. And I'm in Penang, Malaysia. And today is the 7th of March. And this is, I was asked by Jim Buckingham, a good friend of mine from the UAE, who's moved to Oman, to give this talk to his teachers. And it's done as part of Learning Together, which is done on the 7th of March, 2019. And it's Learning Together, episode 403. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording now and wait for Jim to show up. So, be back in a moment. Resume the recording. There we go. The recording is resumed. And hi, Jim.
How you doing there, Vance?
I'm doing fine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Some background on Vance, and this will be rather informal because both of us have known each other for quite a while. Vance actually has a connection here with SQU. He was here back in, when was it, Vance?
1985, which was the year before the university was built. I was here at the development year, and then it opened in 1986, and it was a 10-year position, lasted 10 years, and I was, I left, maxed out on the increments. They wouldn't give me any more increments. Well, actually, they would, and so for that, after 10 years, they said, okay, thank you very much, and I left in 1995. Great years to be in Oman, and a wonderful place. I really loved the university. And you're very lucky to be there.
So, Vance and I connected back in the UAE a number of years ago when I started working at Zig. Vance has been heavily involved in promoting the use of ed-tech integration with EFL. EFL did a lot of work in the UAE, high profile, still continues to have a high profile, in doing his Learning Together feature, which is typically every Sunday. So I think we are being featured in it this week.
You are.
Which is being shared with people around the world. It'll be recorded, and so you can access it later. But he's got quite a tribe of, quite a network globally that will be accessing this later. So I'm not going to say much more. I think it's more than enough. The show is yours, Vance. If I can help you in any way, let me know, okay?
Okay. Well, you were talking about Learning Together. Let me just share that page. Learning Together is a, let's see, it's this is the website. It's a blog. And let's see, how did I get up there? This is what we did last week. Basically, I blog everything that we do in Learning Together. Last week, episode 402. It's at learningtogether.net, which is what I'm using as my byline these days. Let's see if I can go back up to my slideshow. I might just be changing windows all the time.
I mentioned that Vance is right now in Penang, Malaysia. It's about 4 hours ahead of us. So he's getting ready for dinner here. Once this is done, it's dinner time.
Dinner time's far away, but it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here. So just 4 hours ahead of you. And I'm in Penang, Malaysia right now, and kind of enjoying not having to get up and go to work in the morning. Learning Together is something we organize on a page. Let's see, this is what it looks like. This is the schedule for Learning Together. There's a table of contents. It's learningtogether.pbworks.com. This is our next event. It says March 7th. Learning Together, episode 403 with Vance Stevens on supporting student writing with the help of voice to text. And that's where we are right now. And so anybody who wants to see what we're doing can go to there. And of course, I use social media to advertise, but there was something about the time, so I didn't actually advertise it until last night. I wasn't sure when to set it, but it doesn't really matter. I don't think there's anybody else watching us right now, because otherwise they'd be in the Zoom chat. That's the only way they can participate. So, but in any event, I index all my activities in Learning Together. Let's see if I can find that over here. There's an index here. And we've been doing this since 2009. There have been 402 episodes so far. This is the 402nd. So these are all the events we've had. You can find links to all of them, so you can go back and see all the recordings of all the things we've done in the last 10 years. So anyway, that's Learning Together. And what I'm doing is telling you about something I've been working on for the last few years. I was at higher colleges of technology, working at the military college, the aviation college, actually, one of the military colleges. I presume you can hear me okay, and you can see my slides, which I've just started.
It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. So basically, this is what I'm doing now and who you are, which I think you already know. And just to let you know, there's that slide again. You can follow these slides if you have a QR code reader. You can shoot that QR code, or you can go to tinyurl.com/SQUVance, and at that URL, you can see the slides that I'm showing right now. That's beneficial because there are a lot of links there. If you have any questions, you could either shout it out because I can hear you, or you could ask it in Twitter. And if you go to Twitter, let's see, I had that right here. Here's Twitter. Here's SQU Vance. Let me just refresh that. That's a search on SQU Vance. I'm refreshing it now, and so far I'm the only one who's tweeted there. I tweeted just before this presentation that I was about to do it. So if you have any comments, I'm monitoring this on another screen. So if you have anything you want to say during the presentation, you want my attention, I'd be happy to respond to you. So that kind of makes things and your classroom interactive in case your students can use Twitter in the class. So, any questions before we get going?
Any? No?
Okay, just leaving that slide on the screen, giving you a chance to absorb the information that you can use to get back into the presentation I'm doing. And this is what I'm doing today. There are 3 parts to my presentation. One thing, I've got a little video that shows me interacting with a student who was down in a classroom I had just left. I had just taught him. I had given him some feedback on a paper. He started writing on that paper in class. It was a physics class. I'm sure in my class, I sort of thought he was doing something else with another class or with maybe, but anyway, he always seems to be distracted, but here he was distracted with my paper. So are you okay, Jim?
Yeah, I'm just trying to reduce your image size from here. It's happening.
Can you move
Okay.
it to your left?
You want me to put it over? That's a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, so basically I'm going to show you this little video snippet right at the beginning, and then just an example of why I use Google Docs. And then I'm going to show you 2 techniques. One technique I use is to provide voice for just-in-time feedback. So what that means is when I'm in class with the students, they're writing in Google Docs. I understand a lot of you use Google Docs, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we all have different ways of doing it, but one thing I found very effective was to use the voice feature on your cell phone or on any tablet that you have. There's usually Android, iPad, or Apple. They all have voice features, and so if you're using those, you can. Usually our teacher computer where I was a PC, so I could bring up the students' work on the board in the classroom, and with the work on the board I could go over to the student with my iPad and I could make comments on his work while I was talking to him. I could talk to him and make comments into his work, so he had them right there. I'll show you how that works in a minute. So that's one thing, one really quick thing I can show you. And the other thing is something I've gotten into, I was getting into right at the end of my time with the Khalifa bin Zayed Air College. That's where I worked. And that's where I was teaching low-level students, having a lot of problems with them just getting going on writing, and I kind of discovered they really preferred to write on paper because they had these iPads and there's no keyboard, so they just found it easier to get going on paper. And then I have a technique for where I would talk their writing, what they wrote, into a Google Doc, and then let them work on it from there. So I'll show you all those things. Those are 3 things I plan to do today. So in the slides, this is what I really like about Google Docs. I've got this video queued here, so I'll just play it on the video. So as I explained, what was happening, oh, wait a minute, okay, I'll make it big. Is that coming out, by the way, is that big one? Is that coming out in my screen, or is that in a browser? Can you see the big video?
Yep.
Yep, you can, okay.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, I wasn't sure. I'm sharing a browser, so I guess that's opening up in a browser. So basically, this student, as I said, he's sitting in a physics class, and he's just gotten to look at the feedback I gave him in a Google Doc, and he started writing on it. I think I was looking at his paper up in class, and I noticed he was working on the paper at the time, so I just joined him, and I started writing comments and things like that. So we can look at this for a moment as I start putting in comments. And then if you want to play it yourself, you can take it from there, because let's see, how far are we along here? It's a 4-minute video. Okay, so here I'm making a comment, specific age, or if your health condition is good or bad. So I said, oh, you should write, and it doesn't matter if your health condition is good or bad. So he immediately acted on that feedback. Do you have any comments on what's going on here, or questions?
How many are using Google Docs right now with students? So got less than half of this. Okay. And how many of us put comments?
This is iced tea, by the way. Nothing haram here. Okay, so anyway, basically, it's just an example of a student who's interacting with me in Google Docs on the fly from a distant location. Could have been at home at night. I could be looking at his paper. So it's just an example of how nice Google Docs is to use with students. Okay, I'm going to pop out of this one, I think. I'm not sure what it's doing. It looks like oh, there it is. Okay, so that's, I'm going back to my slideshow. So as I said, you can play this later if you want. There's the link to the YouTube right there. And it's also embedded in the slideshow. Did you see enough of it, or do you have anything to add or to comment on?
No additional comments. We've got a few people that are already familiar with it, are using it. It's perhaps new to some, I don't know still.
Yeah, well, it's that interactivity with the student that can be done synchronously in this case, which is really rare to capture, by the way, or asynchronously. Normally it's asynchronously. So you comment on the paper, you get the feedback the next day when you see the student, and the student hopefully acts on the feedback. So that was kind of the classic way I was working with students when they had PCs in particular. After a while, they got iPads. So while they had iPads, I developed another way of working with them, and I published this. I did some presentations in TESOL, Baltimore, or something like that. And anyway, I published this in 2015 in the TESOL EJ. And it's basically a paper which shows, let me see if I can find it here. It's finding your voice. Okay, this is it right here. Let's see if I can pop up and get back approximately to the same place. Okay, so this is an article I wrote. It talks a lot about using voice in writing. But there's the video you just saw. It's also embedded there. A little theory on writing your voice. And here is some tools. I don't know, I put a note in that Google Doc that we're all sharing, a comment that there are 2 tools I use when I'm commenting on student papers. And I think these are really cool. If you don't know the shortcuts, the strikeout tool, Alt-Shift-F, is a really nice way to quickly cross out student work. And the comment tool, Control-Alt-M on a PC, apparently it's activated by voice on iPad. I've made a, oh yes, so sorry about that, yeah. Oh, I'm not sure what note I made there. I'm spacing on it. So anyway, basically, those are quick ways to make strike-throughs and comments on student work. So there's how the strike-through works. And here's what I wanted to show you. This is the when you're making comments on students' work. Let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Okay, there we go. It's a little bit larger now. So what I would do is here I have, let's see, this process occurs. Okay, so I wanted to make a comment on that word process. So I highlight it and then press Control-Alt-M. And then when the comment window appears, I speak the comment into my iPad. And it comes out on the student's writing, and if you've got it projected on the screen, it comes out above that. So let's test it. And let me find my slideshow again. Okay, so let's test it here. Here's where you should be. Can you guys bring up, by clicking on the link in your slideshow, if you have it there, can you bring this document? Yes? Oh, what happened?
I can't do it through.
Hang on a minute. Something's weird. I'm getting. Oh. I've got voice here. Oh yeah, sorry about that. This one started and it's playing in my ear. Okay, so let me just get rid of those video windows. Okay, that won't happen again. All right, back to my slideshow. Sorry, I got this video appearing. So the document you shared with me, let's see, I can bring it up here. Here's the document, right there. I don't know if you have access to this document. If anybody in the audience has access to it and you'd like to bring it up right now, I'll just demonstrate that technique. I have to start up my iPad again. Okay, so that's complicated. The worst thing about iPad, of course, you can make it turn off earlier, but then the battery disappears. So I just have to put my passcode in. Can you see the document on your screen?
Yeah, it's in the Zoom.
Good.
Zoom,
okay.
browser.
Well, it's going to oops. Oh boy. Okay, so I'm trying to type a password and talk at the same time. It's like I might as well chew gum while I'm at it. Okay, hang on.
So we're just waiting for you to open up your iPad to demonstrate.
I've got it open now. Okay, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to that document on my iPad now. All right. Okay, so I'm at that document now. It could be your student's work. I'm going to just highlight something here. Okay, let's see if I can select this. Okay, I'm going to I've just selected the word worked. The second button is make a comment. So I'm going to make a comment, add a comment. Okay, so there I am making a comment. I'm going to press the voice button. I'll make my comment now. Very good use of present perfect. Excellent. Okay. I'm entering the comment, and there it is, right there in the document. If that were the student's work, I would tell him that. And I also got a little bit of what I said earlier, but basically I can go back and edit that. But you see how it works?
Yeah, it saves a lot of time.
Well,
keyboarding.
What's really neat about it is with your iPad, you can walk around the classroom. So you can be with the students and you can be making comments on their work that come up on the screen for the benefit of all the students if you want to do it that way. But basically you can do exactly what I did. You can be in the class. I'm distant, I'm away from the screen, and I can make a comment there. So
Question back here?
Yeah, does it only work with an iPad?
Only work with an iPad?
Well, it should work with anything, any device, any tablet or any device where you can bring up the student's work and you can use the voice feature. So you should be able to use it on your Android phone or any Apple Apple.
Any device.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Google, right?
iPhone.
It has a mic.
Yeah, it should work. You can try it. Try it on this document right here. See if you can bring that up on your device and make a comment.
We do it right now.
if you have write access. You have to have write access to the document. So when I'm working with students, I often share, I always share the document with them. I get them to share their documents with me, actually. I see some anonymous people in there. They probably aren't going to be able to.
I think it's open now. It's open to editing by everyone, depending on the link that you've got.
Let's see. It says anyone with the link can edit. Yes, you can. So possibly you should be able to comment.
How can we use the voice feature? How can we access the voice memo?
Yeah. Vance, can you show us the,
yes.
You'll need to go up to insert, right? Or is it tools?
The comment, where the comment is, I just noticed Julia just made a comment. She said, can only write comments, don't see a voice option. So maybe she wrote that. Oh, but it depends on what device you're on. Let me go back to, let me go back to this one. Here's an iPad keyboard, and you see there's a little microphone there at the bottom. So can you see that on your screen?
Yeah, but most of us are on phones, I think.
Yeah, on my phone. If I go to
iPad, what's that?
Yeah, that's a little too 21st century.
Here on my, this is my WhatsApp, and so there, right there is a microphone icon. So if you can get a microphone icon in the app you're in, then you can do that.
But Vance, I think it's in Google Docs, isn't it? That you
have to bring up.
it?
Yeah, you have to bring up a Google Doc on your iPad. So I guess I could try and do that.
Google Doc will have a place to activate it.
So on iPhone, you highlight the thing that you want to add a comment for, then it will show you add comment. Then it will show you the word of your mobile phone.
Okay.
You can click on the microphone.
There's also the utility built right into Google Docs to activate it as well.
Oh yeah, I have the microphone. Yeah, your keyboard does come up.
Yeah, it's not on all the keyboards. I've got one here that doesn't show Google Docs. Okay, so if I have it on my Google Docs, let's see. Yes, Google Docs. Oh.
So rather than trying to type on that itty bitty keyboard that's in your smartphone, you can use the voice activation, voice to text feature, and provide comment right in your mobile phone on students' work. It's conceivable that students could also be doing doing their papers orally as well, depending on their ability to pronounce the words correctly.
Okay, I've got it here on my iPhone. Sorry, not iPhone, it's on my Android device. And I'm going to try and add a comment. And yeah, I do have I have a microphone there. So I'll see and add a comment there.
Where are you now, Vance? We still have the
I'm back on this document, so let me put it back on the screen. Oh, I moused up to the top of my, oh no, what did I do? I hit the stop share. Okay, so let me go back to share. Unfortunately, there we go. The tab came down as the moment I moved my mouse up there. So I'm having to, here we go. Okay, so
you're highlighting process?
No, here's what I'm where it says 40 years at the Vance has worked.
Okay, first line.
First line, yes, 40 years. You can see my little green thing there. Okay, so now I have to get back to it. Okay.
Yeah. The highlighting doesn't show up because of the resolution on the projector here.
Oh, okay. Yes, I haven't. Yeah, I highlighted the word worked, or no, or 40 years or something like that.
After you submit the comment, it highlights it in yellow. But
For
anything
more
in
than
gray
40 years. Okay, I just submitted a comment there. Do you see it there? Yeah. I submitted that from my Android phone. Okay.
So you talked and it automatically inserted.
Yes, it's a very fast way to comment while you're standing there talking to the student, interacting with the student. You can make those comments, and you know, I just found it a very fluid way to teach a writing class, engaging with students who are all working on their documents. But you know, when someone had a question, or if I would just come over and see what he was doing, he or she, then anyway, it was just a very nice way. I just liked being with the students and having this go on the screen, and they sort of appreciated the technology as well, I think. So should we continue on, or do you have more comments or questions?
Any questions, comments? No, I think we can move along here, Vance. Good stuff.
Okay.
Good to see you.
So I'm at the second part. That's the first and second things I wanted to show you. The third part is how I work with students who were very, very hesitant to write. They had writer's block that was rooted in distraction on iPad and just didn't want to bother with it and didn't care about it, you know, and all that kind of thing. So I wrote this up as well. Actually, I put this in a blog post. I also wrote it. You can see that the link actually goes to a forthcoming publication because I presented at this conference. And that link on that slide goes to the actual presentation, but I think we can see it better at the blog post. So I pulled the blog post up over here. Can you guys see that more or less? Oh,
no.
In the slides, well, let's go to the slides and see what you can see there. That's the blog post. So you could go, I think the blog post possibly is a little clearer than the presentation, but actually I don't know, either of them would work. If you follow it along, you can find these things. So this is what I was looking for. How does that come out? Can you see that okay?
Not great. What I did with this is I increased the contrast on it to make it stand out better. But that's on the Google Doc that we were working on earlier this week.
Okay, well, let me tell you what I'm doing, which is on this slide. I hope this one is working okay. And
yeah.
Okay, so this is how I use voice with these students to help students use the writing process. And by the way, when I say I use voice, I found that my students had a lot of trouble using voice themselves. Now, if you have serious, focused students, you can possibly get them to use voice. They would have to go somewhere where they could speak and not have room noise interrupting them. They have to be able to know how it works. That is, when they speak, that gets put into their Google Doc. So actually, it's a really good way to compose. I love to compose in Google Docs. I use it myself, but then I'm very careful and in a silent place when I'm doing it. But you could have them write using voice in Google Docs. It didn't really work with my students because there was just so much noise in the classroom and they'd shout at each other and, you know, they couldn't really stay focused on it. So, but basically what I have them do in this technique is I would have them start writing a paper in class. So with my students, again, it was hard to get them organized. I know Jim puts his students in groups, and that got mixed results from our students. But anyway, basically what I could get them all to do, if I had a class of students, I could get them writing on paper. You get them settled down and they'd be writing on paper. So they write on paper and they give you a paper at the end of the class. And I would get them, if possible, to share a blank Google Doc with me. Otherwise, I would create one and share it with them. So I've got their paper and a blank Google Doc. And then I would take it back to my office or anywhere where there's a cup of coffee, and I would speak what they wrote on the paper into their shared document. And when I'm speaking it, I would just I would speak it in good English. I would see what they were going to write, and I would just write it the way it should come out. So sometimes you don't have to just record continuously in Google Docs. You can say something and you can wait a minute and think about, oh, what should this one be? And then you can put the next sentence in. So basically what the students have at the end of it in their Google Doc is a good English rendition of exactly what they were trying to say. So this is because I didn't find it very productive working with these students to highlight errors all over their paper and then try to get them to correct or revise errors. They got stuck there. What I was trying to do was prepare them for lengthy IELTS compositions, which they weren't really prepared to write. But I wanted them to focus on the cohesive features, the coherence of the paper. And so basically what I would do, once I'd got that in Google Docs, I would then make a printout of the Google Doc. And on the Google Doc printout, I would write, you need to strengthen your introduction, or you need, okay, that's a nice introduction, make a paragraph making an example of each one in a paragraph, things like that. Just the simple, obvious things. And I would give them back a paper that would show them what they needed to do. So the purpose was that they could then address global issues, and in the revision that they would do, they would hit the grammatical errors could be taken care of then. So what this would look like, here's a student who wrote in a 1 hour long class, he wrote this. I think he says, in all my life, the extreme sport, I asked him to write about extreme sports. I had in mind mountaineering or parachuting. But he says, in all my life, and they all wrote about this, by the way, the extreme sport which I have in the earth and the most popular is soccer. And he goes on to say that. He's actually written 2 sentences. So I took it, what he wrote, and I put that into Google Docs, and I counted 56 words. And in the instructions here, which you can't read, it says that I want them to write 30 minutes and 100 words. So I'm trying to get them in 30 minutes to write 100 words. Not a task for someone who sits down and focuses on it. It's really easy to do. They all can do it. But this guy produced 56 words in the 30 minutes that I allocated for that in class. And so you can see that I wrote good beginning, and I wrote some comments on how you can flesh this out to get 100 words out of it. So he took that. This was a good student. He took it and he produced this. This is, he got 179 words out of it. He started out in the same way, in all my life, the extreme sport which I love most on earth, which is the most popular, is soccer. So he seems to have, I'm not sure how he got that in there. I should have corrected it for him. Or maybe I did correct it for him. I probably corrected the English. So I wrote that, and I made comments for how he could do it. And then he, first of all, second of all, he started adding things to it. So I got it back from him, and he's got 179 words. By then, I had increased the, we're shooting for IELTS essays of 250 words. So I wanted them to draft 100 words, and then now I'm trying to get them to flesh out to 250 words. So he's got 179 of 250, which really isn't too bad. They only have to write really about 210 words on an IELTS essay in any event. So that's what I wrote up in my blog. Let's see what you can see here. Maybe, can you see this better?
Yeah, text is bigger.
Yeah, this is exactly what I just showed you. Having trouble scrolling here. Sorry, there we go. So this is example 1, where the student wrote 56 words and then gave that to me. And then I wrote some comments on it. And I told him the first sentence is a good start. Yes, okay, so I think I pretty much wrote what he had said. I didn't really, I said, in all my life, the extreme sport which I love most on earth and which is the most popular is soccer. So I actually said that, you know, not to keep faithful to what he was trying to express, but correct it grammatically. And so anyway, and then he went on and produced this, 179 words. So, and I then made more suggestions how you could improve the paper. Make the introduction paragraph explain what you'll write about, add detail, write a conclusion, things like that. So I don't know if we got a third draft out of him, because I was being put into different classes at that time, so I don't really remember. Another thing, here's student number 3. Another way I would sometimes start out with my students is I would have them make an essay planner. Here's a 4-paragraph essay planner where it asks the student some questions about the essay. The student fills them in, and from that, he should write an essay. So here's the essay he wrote, which is, I asked for 200 words in this one. So this is a more advanced class, I think. So he got most people and firstly, and he went on to a second page. He's got secondly and finally. Okay, so this was actually pretty good. So I read all this back into the paper, The purple part he copied from the rubric, so I suggested that he wouldn't get credit for those words if he copied from the rubric. He has to put things in his own words. So I tried to get him to address that. And then my comments. Where are my comments? Here we go. These are my comments. I think they were on a second page. But what did I do? I can't see my comments on his work. Why not?
Is it a screenshot?
Well, anyway, okay, there you are. That's in my blog as well. I think, okay, so, yeah. Anyhow, he eventually produced 233 words. Okay. So, shall I continue showing some examples, or?
Any comments, any questions? Yeah.
So how is this increasing accuracy? I mean,
increasing accuracy.
Is it increasing accuracy by this kind of feedback, or do you think it's the fact that they were given a second chance with different kind of feedback that they're able to produce a longer text?
When I worked in Sultan Qaboos University, and I worked in the aviation colleges or the military colleges, I worked in the naval college as well. I had a lot of problem getting students to focus on accuracy. And accuracy for these students was probably best increased by just keeping writing and practicing writing, because they weren't getting enough writing practice either. So if you gave them something to correct all the errors on this page, or find and correct the errors, that's one thing, or highlight or mark them in such a way that doesn't just give them the answer, it says wrong verb tense or something like that. That would hold them up for a whole class. They could, or some of them might, when they ask questions, you could see they really didn't know how to address where the error was. So, and I don't really know I get a lot out of Rosetta Stones, where I have something that I can compare with something else, and I can say, oh, this means this is that. So, but my students didn't seem to work that way. So I found that since I needed to get them up to that 200-word level, I didn't have time with them also. I only had, sometimes I would just spend, say, 4 or 5 classes with them. And that's in total, so to get them to do something that I thought would effectively help them on the test, I would try to get them to write more. Because even when we mark the tests, you have a holistic accuracy score, but the test was really marked on, the IELTS tests anyway, have a lot on how you fit the pattern of producing that kind of essay. And I'm not just teaching for the test. I really just felt that with these students, spending a lot of time on accuracy was just kind of rubbing their noses in it, whereas getting them to flesh out their work and getting them to express themselves more was working with some of the students. So if you're in a better situation with your students, when I was working in SQU, I think I did work a lot on accuracy with the students, and students would come to my office and I would work with them there. So it could be a different kind of students. But this is just one way that I work on getting students to increase their production without focus on accuracy. If you want to focus on accuracy, you could probably do that perhaps with another step after you get their paper. You could, but then you wouldn't really use this technique. This technique is for students who do not like to start composing on their cell phones or on their iPads or on tablets. That I couldn't really get them to, and I'm told that you have PC labs, or I don't know how effectively you can use them, because apparently there are not that many of them. So I don't know. You tell me. What do you think? How would this be something you could do with your students, or?
Comment? Over here?
You could come up more closer to the computer,
Mike?
and I could hear you better.
Yeah, probably not being able to hear you. Want to come forward a little bit? Or
I guess it would be a good idea for the writing center to come here, write something like this.
good idea to apply it to working with students in the writing center.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just a technique. It's one of many techniques you have in your quiver. I know that Jim told me that he puts his students in groups, and he gets the groups to produce one essay for 3 people. So I wrote back to him in that document that if you had a student who wasn't working well in groups, you know, their student was kind of obviously not really participating or just didn't like to work in groups. Sometimes I don't like to work in groups, but anyway, you could use that with that student. You could pull that student aside and say, okay, here, write what you want to say here. Anyway, so it's something that you can use to address the students who need it. In my case, all my students need it.
Yeah, if you're not looking at accuracy, so say for example you're focusing on the structure, because we have a very rigid structure the students have to follow here. So it would be useful for that. So you dictate what they've written and then they can work on it on the computer. And also, again, for fleshing out ideas, like it for that, where you don't have to work on accuracy, you just get them to develop, explain, whatever. And then you can always later say, now, if you want to work on accuracy, what did I change from your original essay, or what did it change?
Yes, you could get them to circle. I give them back their written papers and their Google Doc. I would give them both to them so they'd have them both. So you could get them to circle the errors, the things that were changed. You could have them notice them in that way. So that's not really an active, that's not getting them actively to do something, but it is getting them to notice. So and I always keep copies too. That's where I got these data. So you can go back and you can, if you find mistakes recurring, you could show students, or they'll have a record themselves. So, yeah.
Good point. Thanks for sharing. Kevin, any other comments?
I have a comment. I like the support that you give the students, but if the student gets to know that you are going to actually write it better for them, you think that actually lowers their level of effort?
That's only done once. So, and you can see their level of effort is pretty low to begin with. When the student gives me 55 words in 30 minutes, but then once I get him going, he actually brings that up to 170 or whatever it was.
Do you think it's more encouraging than discouraging? That initial sort of kickstart, you think that boosts the student's motivation rather than make them less attentive?
Lazy?
I didn't want to use that word. I was doing everything I could to avoid that.
I could tell. That's why I stepped in to help you out.
Yeah, I couldn't really hear that well, but maybe that was just a comment amongst yourselves. Huh?
No, just the comment that, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, no, but he answered it. Yeah, no, he answered it.
Okay,
He
just
said that it was like a kickstart, and the student did. Actually.
Yeah.
It's for me, because I worked in the writing center. Part of our training was never, the students' work. Students have full ownership, so never change a student's work. But that's an urge that I have to actually almost sit on my hands, because working with Google Docs, I just want to type out what I know they mean. But it seems you found a good balance between giving them enough but not too much. I don't know. I think that's a very intuitive skill.
Yeah, that's why in this student's work, I read into his paper. We could go back and look and see what he said, but I read, in all my life, the extreme sport which I love most on earth, and which is the most popular, is soccer. Let's see what he actually wrote. He actually wrote, in all my life, the extreme sport which I love in the earth, and the most popular is soccer. Okay, so it could have been on earth. I could have changed it to on earth. Let's see, on earth. I changed it to on earth. So I didn't change much, but I just made it grammatically correct. So there wasn't a lot changed. I didn't really address I would have said that a lot differently, but at least we got some decent English out of it.
Vance, a question for you. Did you ever ask the students what they thought of this?
I didn't do a follow-up study. As I said, a lot of times I would have the students and then I would get changed. The classes would change. It wasn't a really well-run language center for so many reasons, not necessarily due to the people working there, but it's just the situation. So I didn't get a lot of follow-up with the students. I could be in the middle of this process and then I would be switched from one class to another. So, and this was something I did in my last semester there. So it didn't really take to that far, but I think the students who wrote more probably liked the technique, and there were a lot of students who just wouldn't write at all. But then they weren't going to write no matter what you did. So it was really hard it was a hard place to work, really, for many reasons. But so no, I suppose if you wanted to use the technique and follow up with research, you could find out if the students liked it by asking them more directly. But I just got results, so that's what I thought. That was the extent of what I came up with.
Yeah, question here, Vance.
Can students interact with teachers by voice as well?
Did you hear that, Vance?
No, say that again.
Can the students interact with the teacher the same way using voice to text?
Well, as I said, the problem with this voice with the students, I don't think it was that the voice wouldn't recognize them. It was just that they didn't have the focus to sit and just with an iPad and focus on. You could try it with your students. You might have better luck. It's hard to do in a classroom full of people because things that other people say get heard on your device. So I don't know how the interaction is done mostly in Google Docs. So how would they interact with me in voice? They could, you mean make voice, write in voice on their document? But that's
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
But it writes what it hears, I think.
and that's the problem.
say again.
It writes what it hears, but
Yes,
the
that's right.
pronunciation-
Yeah, it writes what it hears, and the students might say something, and then they would make a joke to their friend, and so it just got messed up. It was kind of hard for them to do, and a lot of the things anything you say in Arabic is going to be totally misrepresented, like anybody's name, for example. So you have to be aware of that. I find personally when I'm working with voice on these devices that I like to take it to a PC and make the corrections. So when I speak it, I don't even get perfect fidelity when I speak, but I get enough to where I can go back and very quickly make the corrections that I want to make. So
Question.
for me, another thing I should say is this was a way for me to deal with classes of up to 20 students, having maybe 2 or 3 of those classes a day. So I come away with 60 to 90 papers I have to address. That didn't really ever happen. Half the students wouldn't do it. So I only had half that many. But still, if you have, if you have to deal with everything your students present to you, then this is one way to do it. Quickly, I could do it quickly. I could be ready the next day in the next class with their feedback and keep it going. So it was very effective in that way.
Just looking at the time, we're going to need to be moving out of here in about 2 or 3 minutes. But I know there's a couple more questions, at least one that I'm aware of. Tracy, you want? Sorry. Tracy. I don't know where it's going.
I have a question, actually, it's a tech question and it's related to the student recordings. I have my students submit voice recordings, just recording these files. Do you know, is it possible to import a voice recording into Google Doc and have it? Yeah. Is that something that, do you know, did you hear my question?
I heard it, an is it possible question. What is it possible to do what? Tell me, Jim.
Is it possible to import a voice recording file, an audio file, and have that, have Google transfer it into a transcription?
Rather than voice, take a recording.
Yeah,
And
probably would not work well. There are lots of apps you could try, but I doubt that would work well, because going from speech to text, that's difficult. Going from text to speech, the computer can do that pretty well, but speech to text has a lot of, it's a very well developed field that Google has done very well with, and they've developed it to where it pretty much all understands most of what you want to say. But going from a recording, you could try it. If the recording was very clear, maybe you might want to be sitting there with a PC and making corrections as it's going. I've never tried it really, but in theory, yes, it would work. But in practice,
I have a hunch it would work.
Yeah, I'll give it.
Because how many of you have picked up a Google Home? Those little microphones that talk, you can give talk messages to you.
Cook my dinner, pick up my child.
Yeah,
give
that's
me a
that.
massage.
Well, I've seen that pick up stuff off of YouTube, off of my TV. Somebody on a YouTube video says, "Okay, Google," and that activates the Google Home.
That's exactly why I don't have one. I have a question about the voice messages. Can we just keep them as recorded messages and not have it translated into text? So the student clicks on the comment, listens to what you said about it, maybe makes a change, goes to the next comment, clicks and listens, and then we don't have the fact with, oh, it's misheard me.
that's a great idea. I did hear that. So the question was, what if it doesn't record your voice? Remember, it keeps no record of your voice. It's using an algorithm to go from your voice to text. So there's no voice that Google has. So there's no recording there. But that's a really nice idea. I like that. And also another thing I might point out, when you've got in your home, when somebody on YouTube says, "Okay, Google," the Google tool is set up to listen for "Okay, Google." So it will find that, but it wouldn't then transcribe everything else that it hears. It wouldn't know what to expect, but it's expecting. It's one of the things it's expecting. So that's why that works well.
Okay, we're just about out of time here. Any last comments, questions, concerns, issues, compliments, whatever? Nothing. We're all quiet. Good. Thanks very much, Vance, for taking the time to share with us. And,
Okay, my pleasure.
Giving us some food for thought, playing around with voice to text. I am expecting everybody now to run off to Google and give this a go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And if the URL on the board, you should be able to remember it, tinyurl.com and then SQU Vance.
And you'll be able to save this as a Zoom
yes.
link that we can then distribute to staff that weren't able to come that perhaps wanted to.
Yes, I certainly hope so. That's the theory. I'll know when I check my computer. But yeah, it should be working.
That's great. Thanks very much, Vance.
Okay.
And we'll,
it says it's recording, so should tell you it's recording as well.
Yeah, I don't see it. Yes, it is. Top left corner.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. You were my Learning Together episode 403. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come here and talk to you about writing. I always love to talk to teachers. This is March 7th, 2019. I always say the date on podcasts. Nobody else does, only me. So anyway, well, thank you very much. We've been with Jim Buckingham and the teachers at Sultan Qaboos University in Muscat, Oman. And nice to see you. Nice to see you, Jim. And the rest of you.
Take care.
Good to see you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. I will
Waste.
end the recording.